A feared and ruthless Korean mafia boss, moments from buying an engagement ring for the new woman his family chose, went completely pale when he sees the pretty black woman he abandoned 17 years ago, standing across the showroom beside two young boys with his eyes. The velvet box hit the marble floor before he even realized his fingers had released it. It cracked open. A 4.6-carat diamond rolled across the polished tile of Seoul's most exclusive private jewelry house, past a security officer who instinctively reached for his radio, past a sales director who had just bowed 90 degrees, past the gold-engraved plate that read, "By private appointment only, Lim family clientele." Kang Joon-ho did not move to retrieve it, because across that showroom, standing beneath a chandelier worth more than most properties on that street, was a woman he had locked away in the deepest part of his memory 17 years ago. Amara Osei, the woman he had cherished, the woman he had walked away from, the woman who had disappeared from Seoul one cold October, carrying his children completely alone, never encountered again. And standing beside her in matching charcoal school blazers were two young boys. Same jawline, same sharp, focused gaze, same way of holding themselves perfectly still when absorbing a room. His jaw, his gaze, his exact stillness. Joon-ho's chief of staff leaned close. "Chairman, the Lim family attorney confirmed tomorrow's dinner. They are awaiting your announcement." Joon-ho did not hear a single word, because he was calculating something he desperately did not want to finish. 17 years. Twins. Young boys. 17 minus 17? She had told him the evening before that she had something important to share in the morning. He never returned that morning. He dispatched his driver with a sealed letter instead. She had been carrying his children. She had attempted to tell him, and he had selected the empire over the only woman who had ever seen him as something beyond his family name. If you are already feeling this, stop for 1 second and subscribe to Korean Mafia Boss Tales, because what happens next is going to crack something open in your chest in 3 places and rebuild it in the 4th. Do not scroll away from this one. The taller boy looked up, found his eyes across the marble, and studied him the way someone studies a face they were never given permission to recognize. He did not look away. He simply observed, calm and unhurried, with the steadiness of a boy who had learned to read rooms before he learned to read textbooks. The sales director, sensing something catastrophic forming in the atmosphere, quietly retrieved the diamond from the floor and held it carefully, like an offering Joon-ho had no right to accept. "Chairman Kang," she murmured softly, "shall I arrange a private room?" He did not respond. Amara had gone completely still. The variety of stillness Joon-ho remembered from the night he ended things, when she had not raised her voice, had not pleaded, had simply regarded him the way a person regards a door swinging shut permanently. The boys sensed it before they understood it. "Iyama," the shorter one said in flawless Korean, "are you all right?" The taller one stepped forward in front of his brother, protective, automatic, a gesture Joon-ho himself had made countless times for his own younger sibling growing up. Amara located her voice. Steady, composed, devastating. "We are leaving now." Amara, her name fractured coming out of him. He had not spoken it aloud in 17 years, and it emerged cracked and foreign, like a word from a language he had abandoned and could no longer pronounce correctly. She did not turn back. Don't. One word. Final as a locked door. She walked past the sales director, past the diamond, past the man whose name caused government ministers to return calls within 60 seconds. The boys followed without hesitation, though the taller one glanced back once at the exit. Just once. And in that single backward look, Kang Joon-ho encountered something no rival's threat across 2 decades of power had ever produced in him. His son had no knowledge of who he was. That was what broke him open completely. But that was not the worst discovery of that evening. The worst arrived later, alone in his penthouse on the 42nd floor, when he opened a compartment inside his late father's wall, safe that he had never touched out of reverence and quiet superstition. His father had passed 2 years prior. Above the safe hung a calligraphy scroll, aged ink on yellowed paper, inscribed with one line: "A son's highest duty is to the family name." Jun-ho had believed that once. Inside the inner compartment were 3 items: a financial ledger, October 17 years ago, a document folder stamped, Osei, resolved, and a photograph he had never seen before. Amara, visibly pregnant, gripping a single suitcase outside an apartment building that was not hers, tears on her face. Captured from a calculated distance. On the reverse side, surveillance authorized, Director Kang Sr. Jun-ho lowered himself into his father's chair very slowly. His father had known she was carrying his children. His father had watched her leave the country, and the ledger recorded a wire transfer of 345 million, one directed to one recipient. Shin Dae-won, his most trusted executive director. The man who had delivered the eulogy at his father's funeral. The man who called him Hung and had always seemed to mean it, genuinely. The accompanying note contained 4 words only: permanent solution, nonviolent. Jun-ho's grip tightened around the ledger until the paper tore at the edge. He had not simply abandoned Amara. His father had engineered the abandonment, and his most trusted lieutenant had executed it without hesitation. He had spent 17 years carrying guilt for a decision that had been constructed entirely by other men, who concluded that a Black American woman carrying his children had no place inside the Kang family legacy. And here is precisely where this story stops being about heartbreak and becomes about war, because Jun-ho now had 2 adversaries he never once suspected: his own buried history and his own right hand. Amara did not cry in the vehicle. She did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry when she unlocked the door of the modest apartment she had funded entirely alone through 11 years of work that started before sunrise and ended well after dark. She cried in the bathroom with the ventilation fan running. John pressed his ear against the door, regardless. "She is crying," he said quietly to his brother James standing in the corridor behind him. "Because of that man. Did you see how he looked at us?" James hesitated, like he already knew us. Both boys went silent. James spoke first. "Young. His eyes." "Did you notice his eyes?" John had noticed. He encountered them every single morning in the mirror. He simply had never possessed a name to attach to the reason. When Amara emerged, her composure was fully restored. Dinner was on the table within 20 minutes. Doenjang jjigae, rice, 4 side dishes. She moved through that kitchen the way she always had, efficient and warm and entirely present. But the boys had spent 17 years learning to interpret everything she chose not to say. John set down sticks. "Iyama, who was that man?" Her spoon paused for one breath. "Someone I knew a long time ago, before you, before any of this." She did not deceive them. She had committed to that the day they were born, that she would never contaminate them with her pain. She would offer truth in portions they could carry. "He chose a different path," she said. "That is all. Eat." They ate. But inside John's pocket, his phone had already registered a notification from an unrecognized Korean number. "I have no right to contact you." "I know that, but please, let me explain." KJH John did not show his mother. Not yet. The following morning, Kang Jun-ho entered the executive floor of Kang Capital Group 43 minutes behind schedule. He had never once been late in his professional life. Shin Dae-won was already at the head of the conference table, advancing through quarterly figures. He rose the instant Jun-ho entered, bowing at the precise angle of a man with an unburdened conscience. "Chairman, we were concerned." "Sit down, Day One." The room complied. Jun-ho did not. He crossed to the floor to see Cecilia's window, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the city below. 17 years ago, October. A transfer of 345 million won left a private account and arrived in yours. The notation said, permanent solution, non-violent. Every name, every instruction, every individual involved will be on my desk before this building empties tonight. And Day One, he turned slowly. Do not attempt to deceive me. I have already seen the ledger. The temperature in the room dropped measurably. Day One's expression did not shift, but the half-second before his reply communicated everything. Jun-ho had spent 2 decades studying the micro-expressions of men who fabricated realities professionally. That instruction came from your father, Chairman. My father is no longer living. You are. Which means every fragment of accountability in this room belongs entirely to you. He let that land. You understand what a 45-degree bow means, Day One? Day One bowed, deeply. The posture of a man who understood his position had just become conditional. The chessboard had flipped entirely. The boss was no longer pursuing rivals. He was pursuing the truth. And the most trusted piece on his own side had just become the opposition. It took 5 days to get Amara to agree to meet. She declined the car he arranged. She declined the private suite at the Four Seasons Seoul. She declined the preliminary discussion his attorney proposed. She selected a modest coffee establishment in Yongsan. 42 seats, bright lighting, fully public. 4 minutes from her front door, her territory, her conditions. She arrived first. He arrived second, unaccompanied, without security, without the timepiece his father had given him, without the overcoat that cost more than most monthly salaries. He wanted her to see him. Not the operation behind him. She did not rise when he sat down. 30 minutes, she said. I did not come here for an apology. I came because my sons saw your face, and I will not allow them to spend their lives uncertain. Say what you need to say once, clearly, and then remove yourself from our lives unless I decide otherwise. That is fair. I know it is fair. I established the terms. She slid a folded sheet across the table. Handwritten. 4 lines. Phase 1. Conditions of contact. 1. No unannounced visits, no surprises. 2. No disclosure of your identity or organization to the boys. 3. All communication routed through me first. For 1 monthly meeting, public location, my selection. Jun-ho read it twice. He had closed billion-dollar acquisitions with fewer stipulations. And if I violate a condition, we disappear again permanently. And this time, I have the resources to ensure not even your most trusted director can locate us. His head lifted sharply. She offered the smallest smile he had ever witnessed. Not warm, not cutting. Simply informed. Yes, I determined a long time ago that I was not simply unfortunate 17 years ago. I was managed. I just could not prove it. Now you can. Go prove it. Then perhaps we discuss Phase 2. Jun-ho signed the document in pen directly in front of her, because that was precisely what it was. Kindly, for a minute, drop your honest answer in the comments. If you were Amara, would you have agreed to that first meeting or not? I read every single reply. For the following 4 weeks, Jun-ho did something he had never once attempted in his adult life. He waited. He sent nothing. He purchased nothing for the boys. He engineered no accidental encounters near their school. He assigned no surveillance, despite every instinct screaming at him to place protection around them. He executed precisely what she requested. Once weekly, 1 message. Investigation updates only. No sentiment, no appeals. Second facilitator identified. Retired immigration official. Verification ongoing. Wire records located. 3 separate transfers, not 1. Sharing upon full confirmation. Shin Dae-won on indefinite administrative leave. Alive. Monitored. Untouched. My word stands. Amara replied with one word each time. Noted. Until the 4th week, when 2 words arrived. Noted. Thank you. Junho stared at his phone for a full minute without moving. In the Cold War of reconstructing trust, those 2 words were a flag of truce. Phase 1 was holding. Inside the operation, however, nothing was holding. The Lim family had received no formal communication that the arrangement was dissolved. Junho had simply gone silent. In Korean business culture, silence from a man of his standing functioned as a sharper insult than any direct confrontation. Chairman Lim Byung-cheol did not receive public embarrassment with composure. He placed a call. That call reached a journalist. That journalist began circulating inquiries regarding a mysterious black woman and 2 teenage boys in Yongsan district. Phase 1 was about to fracture, not because of Junho, but because of the very world he had spent 17 years constructing. That was not the genuine threat, however. The genuine threat was seated at a Cheongdam cafe consuming espresso, awaiting an entirely separate call. Chairman Lim was 66 years old, dressed exclusively in Milan-tailored suits, and had not raised his voice in over 2 decades. He had no requirement to. He sat opposite his daughter, Seo Yeon, the woman Junho had been approaching marriage with, and advanced a folder across the marble surface between them. Read it. Seo Yeon was 34, a Wharton MBA, composed, exceptionally calculated, and genuinely not in love with Junho. She had been conditioned from childhood to regard matrimony as a strategic merger. She read the folder. She closed it. A prior relationship. Twin boys. American black, 17 years ago. He disgraced us. Father. He has not formally announced anything. The mother signs a confidentiality agreement. The boys enroll abroad. The engagement continues. Chairman Lim smiled, the way a master strategist smiles at a student proposing a beautifully constructed but ultimately futile maneuver. My daughter. I have no interest in salvaging this. I want him to declare his choice openly in front of everyone. Because a man who selects a foreign woman and her children over the Lim family can be dismantled in the press within 72 hours. His valuation drops 40%. His partners withdraw quietly. And then you will not marry Kang Junho. You will marry whoever acquires what remains of his operation at 30 cents on the one. Seo Yeon was quiet for a long moment. Understood, she said simply. But that same evening she did something her father had not calculated. She drove herself alone to Yongsan and sat directly across from Amara Osei. Amara recognized her immediately. She did not rise. She simply gestured to the vacant chair. 20 minutes. Same arrangement I extended to him. Seo Yeon almost smiled. She respected this woman before she had finished sitting down. My father intends to release a story about you and your sons within the week. He will withhold your names, but provide sufficient detail for you to be identified by the following afternoon. I came to inform you because I do not accept collateral damage, and your children are not collateral. Amara's hands tightened around her cup. Why are you telling me this? Because I am not in love with him and I carry no fear of my father. And because when I reviewed that file, when I saw the photograph of you, gripping that suitcase 17 years ago, I thought about my own mother, who also had a suitcase, and nobody who came to help her. Silence settled between them. Amara nodded once. Thank you. Do not thank me. Use the information. And tell Junho something from me. The engagement is naturally terminated. I will communicate that to my father in my own time, my own way. His complete focus belongs on you and those boys. That is the only version of this story where everyone remains unharmed. She left. Mara remained seated for 10 minutes. Then she called Junho for the first time. 5 words only. Phase 2. Tomorrow. My apartment. Junho had occupied crisis rooms, He had negotiated with individuals carrying multiple passports. He had stood in a hospital corridor the night his father became irreversible. None of it prepared him for climbing the stairwell of a modest Yongsan apartment building, carrying a single bag of Korean pears the way a proper guest should, moving toward the door of the woman he had broken. Amara opened it. She did not step aside immediately. "Conditions," she said. He nodded. 1. You are here as a guest. Nothing beyond that. Not yet. The boys know you only as an old acquaintance with unresolved business matters. That is all. Understood. 2. No physical contact with them. No embraces. No familiarity. Courtesy only. You eat what I serve and follow my direction without deviation. Understood. 3. If either of them asks you a direct question, your eyes find me before your mouth opens. Every single time. I determine what they are ready for, not you." She studied him for a sustained moment. Then she stepped aside. The apartment was compact but genuinely warm. A weathered sofa. Academic trophies on a shelf. Debate. Competitive swimming. Mathematics Olympiad. A photograph of the boys at roughly age 7. Gap-toothed. Holding ice cream in front of what appeared to be a Chicago lakefront. John and James sat at the kitchen table, textbooks open. They looked up simultaneously. James stared. John stood. "Iyama mentioned you were an old acquaintance," John said. His Korean was flawless, courteous, and carried absolutely no warmth. "Welcome to our home." He bowed precisely 15 degrees, not 1 degree beyond. The identical bow Junho had extended to strangers his entire adult life. Junho returned it, 30 degrees lower. Amara observed the exchange without comment. Dinner was straightforward. Doenjang jjigae, rice, side dishes. Junho, who had dined at Michelin-starred establishments the previous week, ate slowly and carefully, like a man seated before something sacred. The conversation remained easy. School. Football. A novel James was reading. Then James, with the directness belonging exclusively to 17-year-olds, said, "Ajasi, what is it you do exactly?" Junho's gaze moved to Amara. Her eyes did not shift from her bowl, but a barely perceptible nod followed. "I manage capital, private equity, and investments." James considered this. "So you decide where large sums of money are directed?" "That is an accurate summary." James nodded, satisfied. John said nothing. But his eyes did not leave Junho's face for the remainder of the meal. What Seo Yan did in the following 48 hours was the kind of thing women in her position rarely received acknowledgement for. She walked into her father's private study carrying her own folder. Inside it, every Lim Holdings transaction she had personally authorized across the preceding 3 years. Every offshore structure. Every undisclosed account. Every political arrangement with a paper trail. She placed it on his desk without preamble. If anything is directed toward those boys, anything at all, this reaches the National Tax Service by Friday morning. The submission is already prepared. A duplicate sits with a legal firm in Singapore, with standing instructions to transmit automatically if I fail to make contact every 24 hours. Chairman Lim regarded his daughter across the desk. "You would dismantle your own family." "I would defend it," Seo Yan replied. "From you. Because if I allow this, someone will execute the same maneuver against my children someday. And I will not raise my children in a world where men like you determine which mothers are permitted to keep their sons." Chairman Lim did not speak for a considerable interval. Then he closed the folder.
"The matter is concluded."
No apology followed. None was required. In a separate district of Seoul, Junho received one message from Seo Yeon. Resolved. He will not move against them. "Attend to your family, Junho. That is the only thing I will ever ask of you." He read it 3 consecutive times. Then he forwarded it to Amara with a single line. "The boys are secure. And when the moment arrives, tell Seo Yeon. She deserves to hear it. Amara read it, and for the first time in 17 years, she allowed herself, just for one quiet evening alone in her small kitchen, after the boys had gone to sleep, to cry without the ventilation fan running. 6 months passed. The press cycle moved forward. The stock recovered. Shin Dae-won, following an exhaustive private internal investigation, was quietly removed from every position of authority inside Kang Capital Group and relocated to a coastal town where his communications were monitored for the remainder of his natural life. He was not harmed. He was not confronted publicly. He was simply and comprehensively removed as a participant. Jun-ho became a different variety of operator. He still ran the organization. He still unsettled rivals. He still made government ministers return calls within 60 seconds. But he departed the office at 6:30 every Wednesday evening for James's swimming competitions. He sat in the rear row at John's debate tournaments, never the front, because John had specifically requested he not make it about himself. He learned, gradually and painfully, the distinction between financing a family and actually being present inside one. And he asked Amara for nothing across those 6 months. Not a gesture of affection, not a definition, not a future. He simply appeared every week on schedule, following her conditions, until one evening in late spring, on the rooftop of her building where she liked to drink barley tea and observe the planes crossing overhead, she turned to him. Phase 4. He turned toward her. "Do not propose to me, Jun-ho. I am not prepared for that, and you should not be either. We are not the same people anymore. We are not even the people who walked into that jewelry house last year. We are slower now, more deliberate. Better, I think." He waited. "Phase 4 is this," she said. "Next Sunday is the boy's 18th birthday. I want you present, not as an old acquaintance, not as a Jossie, but as their father, officially, in front of the small number of people I trust completely. My sister, who flew in from Chicago, my friend Adeze, who looked after them when they were 3, and Mrs. Park, whom you yourself trust with your life. That is the entire guest list. No press, no organization, no announcement. Just a modest dinner with a modest cake and you seated at the head of the table, because that is the place that should have been yours for 17 years. If you can do that quietly and simply, without converting it into a moment, then we move forward. And someday, when the boys are older and when I have decided I am ready, we will discuss what comes after. But not before. Are those terms acceptable?" Jun-ho did not speak immediately. Then he said, in the voice of a man who had finally learned the distinction between acquiring what he desired and earning what he was given, "Yes, those terms are acceptable." She nodded. And then, for the first time in 17 years, Amara Osei reached up slowly and rested her hand against the side of Kang Jun-ho's face. Not as a lover, not as a partner, but as a woman who had decided, on her own terms and in her own time, that this man, the one who had bowed 30 degrees to strangers, who had removed his most trusted director without spilling a single drop of blood, who had sat in the rear row at debate tournaments, was worth permitting back through the door. He closed his eyes. He did not move. He allowed her hand to remain for as long as she chose to leave it. When she finally withdrew it, he opened his eyes and saw Seoul stretched out beneath them. The same city that had once cost him everything. And for the first time in 17 years, he did not see an empire. He saw a home 3 streets away where 2 boys were completing their assignments and 1 woman was about to come back inside to prepare barley tea. Phase 4 cleared, not with a ring, with a Sunday dinner. The Sunday arrived. The cake was modest. The candles were 18. The boys extinguished them together the way they had every year prior. Except this year, there was 1 additional person at the table, seated as promised at the head, quietly and without ceremony. John made a toast. Brief, composed entirely 17 years old in its directness. To Iyama, who did everything. He paused, then selected the word himself, in his own time, on his own terms. And to Appa, who is trying. James raised his glass. Jun-ho's hands trembled slightly when he lifted his cup, but he did not release it. Not this time. And that, friends, is the distinction between a man and a boy wearing an expensive suit. A boy releases the ring. A man holds the cup steady, because he has finally understood what is actually inside it. If this story moved you even slightly, if you have ever believed in second chances that must be earned rather than simply granted, do one thing. Subscribe to Korean Mafia Boss Tales. Hit the notification bell so the next story reaches you before the algorithm moves on. And drop your honest answer in the comments right now. Would you have given Jun-ho a phase 1? Or would you have closed that door permanently? There is no incorrect response. I am reading every single one tonight until midnight. Stay soft, stay sharp, and remember, some doors require 17 years to reopen. The ones genuinely worth reopening always do.